I'm drawing a big castle with a big garden. Do you like it?
I've got you. Just hang on, we're almost there.
The little girl who taught a lonely millionaire how to smile again. The old mansion at the end of Willow Lane had become a place everyone avoided. Its tall iron gates were covered with vines. The garden had once been famous for its beautiful roses, but now every flower bed was empty. The windows stayed closed all year, and the neighbors often whispered that the owner hated people. Inside that silent house lived Arthur Blackwood, an 82-year-old millionaire. He had everything money could buy, but he had no one left to share it with. Every caregiver who accepted the job left within days. Arthur spoke harshly, refused help, and pushed everyone away before they had a chance to know him. He believed loneliness was easier than another broken heart. Across town, Emma Carter was fighting a very different battle. She was a single mother raising her 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, after losing her husband years earlier. Emma worked every job she could find, but the bills kept growing while the paychecks stayed small. One rainy afternoon, her phone rang. "Mrs. Carter," the agency manager said, "there's one position available. Live-in caregiver. Excellent pay." Emma smiled for the first time in weeks. "I'll take it. There is one warning." "I'm listening." "The patient is known for making every caregiver quit." Emma looked at Sophie, who was drawing colorful flowers on an old notebook. "I've survived worse." The Blackwood mansion looked even larger in person. Dark curtains covered every window. The fountain no longer worked. The air felt heavy. Sophie's eyes grew wide. "Mama, yes. Why does this house look like it's waiting for someone?" Emma didn't know how to answer. Arthur never looked at Emma when she entered his room. So he muttered, "They've sent another one. I'm here to help." "I don't need help." Emma quietly organized his medicine without replying. Most caregivers argued. She simply listened. Arthur hated that. Silence was harder to fight. A few days later, Sophie accidentally wandered into Arthur's library. The old man looked up from his chair. "You must be lost." "No, I'm exploring. Children shouldn't be here." Sophie tilted her head. "Why?" "Because this isn't a happy place." She looked around the dusty room filled with thousands of books. "It could be." Arthur almost laughed. "Almost." The next afternoon, Sophie returned carrying crayons. "I'm making you something." "I didn't ask." "I know." She sat on the carpet and began drawing. Arthur pretended to ignore her. 20 minutes later, she held up the picture. It showed a huge garden filled with flowers. In the middle sat Arthur on a wooden bench. Beside him was a little girl holding an ice cream. Above them she had written, "Nobody should eat ice cream alone." Arthur stared at the drawing. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had imagined him happy. Day after day, Sophie visited. She talked about school, about butterflies, about losing baby teeth, about dreams. Arthur listened more than he spoke. Somehow, her laughter made the mansion sound alive again. One morning, Sophie frowned. "Can I ask you something?" "You usually do." "When was the last time you smiled?" Arthur remained quiet. "I don't remember." "That's too long." She reached into her backpack. "I brought you homework." He raised an eyebrow. "My teacher gives homework because she says practice makes people better." "What is mine?" "Smile once today." Arthur shook his head. "Impossible." "We'll see." Weeks passed. The gardeners returned. The curtains opened. Fresh flowers appeared in every room. Even the house staff noticed the change. One maid whispered, "I've worked here for 10 years. I've never heard Mr. Blackwood thank anyone." That afternoon, Arthur quietly handed Emma a cup of tea. "Thank you." Emma nearly dropped it. Winter arrived with heavy snow. One evening, Arthur collapsed while walking toward the fireplace. Emma immediately called emergency services. The roads were blocked. Without wasting another second, she and the estate's driver carried Arthur through the snow to the waiting ambulance. Hours later, the doctor smiled. "You brought him just in time. You saved his life." Arthur spent several days in the hospital. Not one member of his family came. Only Emma. Only Sophie. Every afternoon, Sophie taped a new drawing beside his hospital bed. One showed them building a snowman. Another showed Arthur laughing so hard his hat flew away. Arthur looked at every picture before sleeping. When he finally returned home, he called everyone into the great hall. Lawyers, house staff, Emma, Sophie. His children arrived as well, expecting to hear about money. Arthur slowly stood with his cane. I spent years believing wealth could protect me from pain. It didn't. I built walls so high that even love couldn't climb over them. He turned toward Emma. You cared for me when you had every reason to walk away. Then he smiled at Sophie. And you reminded an old man that happiness sometimes arrives carrying crayons. The room became silent. Arthur continued. From today, this mansion will no longer belong only to me. He announced that half of the estate would become a children's learning and art center where struggling families could receive free meals, tutoring, and medical support. He asked Emma to become its director. Sophie jumped into his arms. I knew you could smile. Arthur laughed. A real laugh. The kind that filled every empty room in the mansion. Outside, the first flowers of spring began to bloom. For years, people had called Blackwood Mansion the saddest house in town. Now they called it the house that learned to smile again. And every child who walked through its gates was greeted by a framed crayon drawing hanging in the entrance. It showed an old man, a little girl, bright yellow sunshine, and one simple sentence underneath. Kindness is the richest gift anyone can give.